Welcome to the ReaderHouse Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. I'm your host, Corey Graham. Join us here every Friday night at 8 p.m. or listen anytime via podcast at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, to name just a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where the independent new authors come first. I'm looking at a book right now. It's a collection of poetry that recounts various stages of the author's life. And I'm going to find out more about it. It's titled My Journey Through Poetry. And the author is Ellie Guidry-James. And the author, Latrizia, is here with me now at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. Latrizia, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you, Corey. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you so much.
Could you tell me all about what readers will find whenever they open up My Journey Through Poetry?
When they open it up, it's going to be, like you said, poetry, what I've gone through in life, a little bit about what I faced, encouragement. They'll find, if they're going through the same situation, as well as maybe being uplifted. It's for the reader itself. Whenever they go to read it, I want them to be able to have their own aspect of what they receive from the book.
Did you have a specific kind of reader in mind when you were writing this?
No, actually, it was for anybody. I know it's a lot of people like poetry. There's, some people that love to hear things about God. There's people who just love seeing other people's life, what they've gone through. So it's just for anybody who want to be able to dive into the reading.
So how did the idea come about then to collect this poetry and publish it for the world?
I actually went to a conference, and when I came back home, it was like, okay, being able to do this, taking my poetry and being able to allow others to be uplifted or to encourage someone else. And so I just actually started putting those things together. Basically, it really wasn't me. It was really God wanting to utilize what I had gone through to help inspire other people.
Is this something you're new at, or have you done this kind of thing before?
No, it was actually all new to me. So being able to learn about, how to even publish the book itself and, what the process was, everything was new to me about that. So I'm a first-time author and just learning, what to do and how to do things. So it was a journey that was awesome to be able to take.
Congratulations for getting that first one out there. That's a huge milestone. There's the writing of the book, you hand off your manuscript, and then you're into that publishing process. Latrizia, what did you find the most challenging part about the publishing process for you?
Probably the editing, because you have to go through it so very carefully to make sure everything is, spelled correctly, done correctly, making sure everything's taken care of in the wording portion. So I would say the editing, but everything else was pretty smooth.
Well, you poured so much time and so much of yourself into this book, and finally that day comes, Latrizia. You open your mailbox, and there it is. My Journey Through Poetry, the first physical copy. You finally get to hold this thing that you made. What was that moment like for you?
It was surreal. Actually, when I opened it to start reading some of the poems, I actually cried a little bit because it was like, wow. The words that, I wrote down during the process of what I was going through is now, in a book. And so it was actually surreal for me at that moment.
Well, now it's official. You're a published author, Latrizia. To you, what's the most rewarding aspect about that?
The rewarding aspect is that others can be able to draw from it. That's the reward. I'm always a person who gives, and so I get more joy out of what other people are receiving. So I would say that's the most rewarding for me.
What are the chances that we might see another book from you here in the future? Have you given thought to that?
Yes, I'm actually working on something. It may not be in the poetry area, but I am in the process of working on another book. So it'll probably be a little bit later, but it will be coming out so readers can have something. This one's going to be more kind of helping others how to go through their pain and encouragement and things like that. So it's in work in progress, not quite finished, but there will be another book coming out. I'm enjoying it. Why stop?
Well, it sounds like the poetry in this book is really going to come as a blessing to so many readers. Again, this is titled My Journey Through Poetry. It's written by Ellie Guidry-James, and it's published by Hawes & Jenkins Publishing. So, of course, you can find it anywhere. Head to Amazon or Barnes & Noble or iTunes, and also traditional brick-and-mortar stores, and you'll be able to find this. Latrizia, it's been really wonderful talking with you tonight. Thank you so much about telling me about your poetry and everything that went into this. I had a really good time.
Thank you, Corey. I appreciate the opportunity.
The new book by Evangelist Bolajoko Olayemi, titled Spiritual Prescriptions, Healing for Any Form of Sickness, Exodus 15:26. It's a reminder of the power of prayer. And we're going to talk all about it right now here at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. I have the author, Bolajoko, here with me right now. Bolajoko, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for joining me tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. It's great to have you here. And I'm curious about spiritual prescriptions. Could you tell me all about it?
Yes. Spiritual Prescription is the book directed by God, leading me to write and push out to many, to change life, to bring people into the knowledge of God, to let people know what God can do in their situation.
Would you say this is a book that both believers and non-believers could get things from?
But it is a book that brings people, not only believers, but unbelievers, everybody. It is the book that lets us know how powerful the name of God is and how it can change your situation. How it can turn around your life for a better. I am a living testimony, so I use it. It works. And when it works for me, it leads me to let it go out for people to be able to benefit. The same thing, I benefit from it.
That's fantastic. How did this book come about, Bolajoko? How did you get the idea to write it?
I'm an evangelist. I'm a missionary. My purpose is to change people's lives. My purpose is to make sure people come to the knowledge of God. So when the time, it has been for long, but when it is actually time, God leads me, stand up, get my testimony out for people to know what I can do. And at the first time, being my first book, it seems very hard, but with the courage, with my prayer life, I can do it. And at the end of it, I see myself doing it.
Well, that's wonderful. Congratulations on getting your first book published. How long did this take you to write and then get published?
When I started the book, the book I've started writing the book for years, simply because I don't know how to go about it. I don't know how to publish. I don't know the rules to say. I don't know the steps to take. So I went to my pastor in the church, my regional overseer. He told me, yes, you can publish it. You can send it to the world, and this can help people. Then I bring it out again. Last year, I go through it. Since I wrote it for long, I started typing it. Let's say if I bring the time together, roughly 6 months, 5 months, that's it.
Then when that day came and you finally got the first copy of this in, you got to hold your book for the first time. What was that like for you?
I'm so excited because I see myself fulfilled in the field of my ministry, So I was so happy that I can change people's lives. I'm so happy that people's situations will change. People in the hospital that lost their hope, they can see hope now. I'm so happy.
Bolajoko, do you think you would write another book? Do you think you have more to say to the world?
A lot. I thought I'm a preacher. I have 2 more books coming, the same company. So I have DNA proof. I have agony cry of a parent. So they are working on it before November is out, by God's grace.
I love it. I think so many people are going to be blessed by this book, and I encourage those listening to definitely go check it out. Again, this is titled Spiritual Prescriptions, Healing for Any Form of Sickness, Exodus 15:26. It's written by Evangelist Bolajoko Olayemi and is published by Christian Faith Publishing, so you can find it everywhere, like on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and iTunes and also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Bolajoko, thank you so much for coming on the show and telling me about your work. I had such a good time talking.
Thank you, sir. Nice to meet you today.
Author Jim Nave has just released his book titled Very Good: God's Plan for You, in You, and Through You. It's a devotional exploring the truth of salvation. And we're going to talk about it. The author, Jim, is here with me now at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. Jim, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me here tonight.
Thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely. Jim, can you tell me all about Very Good and what readers can expect?
So what I found after being a Christian for 27 years was there was so much about the Bible that I didn't understand. I didn't understand really why Jesus came. I thought he came so that I could be forgiven to go to heaven. That's what I was taught growing up. Jesus came to forgive you of your sins so you could go to heaven. But then as I started reading the words of Jesus, he said that eternal life is to know him. Right? I thought you had to wait to get to heaven to know him, like you had to die first, right? But Jesus said eternal life is to know him, and that word is not talking about knowledge. It's not talking about, some kind of a mathematical equation. It's talking about an intimate relationship with him. And I realized that Jesus said, I'm the way, I'm the truth, I'm the life. No one comes to the Father but by me. He didn't say no one goes to heaven, right? That Jesus came to restore us back to relationship with the Father, the source of all life. So I had this encounter with the Lord where he began to challenge me, find what you believe in Scripture, right? If you're a pastor and you're teaching people, you need to know the truth. And this book was kind of a result of what I learned as the Holy Spirit began to teach me what I thought I knew about God, his plan, his nature. And I realized there were some very important things that I wasn't understanding of what God was saying about it.
Jim, was there a specific readership that you were speaking toward here, or would you say it's more of a broad Christian audience?
I think it's an audience for anyone because I think we need to understand the true nature of God. I didn't understand the true nature of God. God says that he's love, and his plan is to reach everyone because his nature is love. And I think that there are a lot of people that think that God's nature is wrath, right? But the Bible doesn't say God is wrath. The Bible says God is love. So I want people to understand the true nature of God and the price that Jesus came to restore your value and purpose so that you could live the abundant life that God had for you from the beginning.
What does your writing and publishing background look like, Jim? Are you experienced in this?
No, this is my first book.
Congratulations. That's such a big hurdle to get over once you get that first one out. How long did this take you to put together?
About 2 years.
When it comes to that publishing end of things, it's a whole new ballgame there. There's a lot of things involved. What did you find challenging about that end?
Just the whole process of doing something new, the process of editing, everything was just new to me, so every part of it was just a new challenge as you go through and, trying to figure out working with a team and figuring out how to coordinate things. I'm a good communicator orally, but I'm not a great writer. So, you're trusting in someone else to take your baby and make it so people can read it and understand it. So it's kind of a humble experience to do that.
So after that 2 years of all the work that you put into this, you open up your mailbox that one day and there it is, finally, your first copy. What was that moment like for you?
It was surreal. It was surreal to see all the things that God had taught you, that you taught to other people and seeing the impact it's had on their life. Now it's on paper so that more people can know the truth and be set free.
Do you have anything you might have picked up along the way that you'd be able to throw out there for the aspiring authors who are listening to us?
Don't give up on yourself. I think so many times we feel like what we have to offer is not enough, or it's only the people, the Rick Warrens of the world, that have written these number one bestsellers. But if God has given you a message, then you need to have the confidence that what he's given you is going to touch someone's life.
Again, this is titled Very Good: God's Plan for You, in You, and Through You. It's written by Jim Nave, published by Christian Faith Publishing, So it's available everywhere. Get it on Amazon or Barnes & Noble or iTunes, and also at traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Jim, thank you so much for coming on the show tonight and telling me all about this book. I had a really great time chatting with you.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
It's exciting that the audiobook edition of the book by Debbie Bradshaw-Badois, titled Dethroning Your Personal Tyrants, is out now. It's a personal development book that's inspired by the author's personal experiences with a focus on self-healing from a painful past. And that's what we're going to be talking about right now here at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. Debbie, the author, is sitting right here with me. Debbie, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining me here tonight.
Thank you, Corey, for giving me the opportunity.
Absolutely. I'm curious in hearing all about dethroning your personal tyrants. Can you tell me about it?
Absolutely. So, Corey, Dethroning Your Personal Tyrants is exactly how you introduced it. It is a personal account on releasing emotional blocks stem from negative events, people, relationships, or even vices that prevent an individual from letting go of a painful past and ultimately healing and moving forward in the present. Most people ask, a tyrant doesn't necessarily have to be a person in one's life. It could be anything. It could be anything from, again, a vice, an addiction, or just even painful situations that occurred in your life. And so throughout the book, it provides guidance to forgiving yourself and others with a focus on self-worth, self-love, which then allows a person to take back one's power in your life. And again, those tyrants that were toxic and had an internal grip on you, it becomes a bit of a metamorphosis and transformative if you follow that journey. And from my experience, I was able to develop 12 chapters. It could be applicable to anyone's life. And through that process, it's my hope that it would place an individual in control and on the throne of their life again. And again, in each chapter, it offers valuable advice that anyone can practice as a result of those situations or things that were once in control of your life.
Was there a specific audience that you were writing for here, Debbie?
It can go from anyone at any age, really. Anybody who's ever been in a toxic relationship, family relationship, friendship, marriages. And even, again, we all have our personal tyrants that, like I said, it can stem from addiction. It can stem from alcohol addiction. It can stem from shopping addiction or anything that you found where it was very difficult to get over and heal from. I know my personal story was really from a kind of a dysfunctional relationship with my mother who abandoned me and my siblings when we were very young. And from that kind of was the foundation to every toxic relation that was kind of the catalyst from that process and then kind of manifested itself into a journey for me that I needed to heal. But it also can represent even like a health condition. And I also struggled with a health condition as well. And so my story kind of prefaces that it doesn't necessarily, the tyrant doesn't have to be a definitive person or even age, because it can span from as young as you can remember and then going all the way through decades of adulthood and those unhealed wounds that we sometimes don't deal with, and it interferes. And with the launch of the Audible portion, it's my hope that it reaches readers who can not only read and connect, but also listen and hopefully place them on their journey to heal.
It's fantastic that audiobook edition is out. Debbie, when you actually heard your book being read, what was your reaction to that? How'd you feel? You were so used to reading it off the page, and now you're hearing it read back to you. What was that like?
Well, it's kind of a bit of a cathartic experience, especially going through the process of choosing a narrator. She did a fabulous job in really expressing herself in the same manner that I would, and inflection and emphasis on certain things throughout the book that I think are going to be pivotal for readers, because you're going to connect with that hearing versus just reading the words across the page. I believe that it is a different experience to hear that. So I was quite pleased and excited, and I'm excited for my audience also to listen to it. And even people who have already read the book, they pick up different things from listening versus just reading. So I'm very excited about that, Corey.
Well, it sounds like so many of us are going to be able to identify with the things in this book, and I encourage those listening to definitely seek it out. Again, this is titled Dethroning Your Personal Tyrants. It's written by Debbie Bradshaw-Badois, and it's published by the Audiobook Network. So you can find it everywhere that you usually go to get your audiobooks, like Audible, iTunes, and Amazon. Debbie, it's been so nice talking with you tonight. Thanks so much for coming on the show and telling me all about this.
Again, Corey, thank you so much for the opportunity. I appreciate your time.
Ellie June Suddreth's new book, titled Friskers Comes to Windy Knoll, is a sweet story of a little cat's adventures on the farm. And that's what we're going to talk about right now here at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. The author, Ellie, is joining me. Ellie, welcome to the show. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. Ellie, can you tell me all about Friskers Comes to Windy Knoll and what readers can expect here?
I can tell you, I believe Friskers was mine by divine guidance from God. I offered my vet the opportunity to adopt this kitten from a feral mother, and I went 3 times to pick Friskers up, but I think they wanted to keep him at the vet. I finally got him, and he was the most amazing cat. He would swim in my pool. I've never seen a cat just jump in the pool before.
Yeah.
He would swim in my pool, and then I did my devotions every morning at my breakfast nook, and he started running from the barn. He didn't like to be caged. He liked his freedom, so my husband made him a cat door in his big red barn.
I love it.
Yeah, and every morning he would run out and he would get his tummy scratched from Big David as he got his vehicle for work. And then he would run up to the house and run through the gate where the pool was, and he would jump up on the windowsill. So I started raising the windowsill a little bit and reading the Bible out loud. And that cat would sit there and listen to most of the story. He was just amazing.
Wow.
And I had 2 little dogs, a Tweenie and a Chinese Crest. And he made friends with both of them, but he really liked Gracie best, the little Tweenie. But I put a big pillow in front of the fireplace. He would lay in the middle, and there was a dog on either side of him.
Aww.
And the story of the book is just about Windy Knoll and that cat and how the one grandson, the youngest one, would just come and, light up the place. And he and I got into a lot of trouble. And that's what the book's about.
I love it. And this is a children's book, correct?
It is a children's book. I never meant to even try to have this book published.
Oh, wow. So what convinced you to do that?
Well, my best friend, we were on a retreat up in the mountains at Billy Graham Library Training Center, and she read it. I had brought it along to, critique it some more, and she read it, and she said, Ellie, you have got to see if you can get this published. So I said, oh, no, I didn't write it to get it published. I wrote it when I was grieving for my husband. He passed away, and, he would be so funny with all the exploits that Josh and I did and getting in trouble. He was so good-natured and, and I lost him on June 1st.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So that was 6 years ago, but still miss him every day. He was such a prince, I tell you. But amazing, so I sent it to 3 publishers, and all 3 publishers wanted it. So I was excited.
Wow.
I thought, oh, my goodness.
That's wonderful. Is this your first book, Ellie, or have you done things like this before?
No, this is my first book. I truly write poetry, and I have since I was in elementary school. I really want to get a book of poetry published because I think some of it is really, really good. But, I never even thought about publishing this book, and I hung on to it for like 6 months or so. And Carolyn said, oh, Ellie, you have got to get this published. But I thought it would help children. When they lose their pets, they just grieve and grieve and grieve. And I wanted them to know, because this is biblical, they're going to see that. They're going to see that pet again in heaven. It helped me to grieve, and it helped me to get through 6 months of just doing nothing but going into my office and looking at what I had written, and then maybe I'd write a poem.
It must have been such a special moment for you whenever you got your first copy in and you finally got to hold Friskers Comes to Windy Knoll. What was that like?
Oh, I was so excited. I got the news up here that I got a book, and of course, we all read it. And my niece and my sister have many grandchildren here. And the boys were, oh, Auntie, and one calls me Nana. It instilled in them the right to write down their stories, because that's what I told them. I said, write your stories. I'm sure you all have a story to write. So keep a notebook with all of it in there. So my story is probably as old as time, but I don't know how other people grieve, but I really needed to be busy, to not just sit and think about things all the time.
The title again is Friskers Comes to Windy Knoll It's written by Ellie Suddreth and published by Christian Faith Publishing, so you can find it anywhere, like on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and iTunes, and also at traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Oh, Ellie, it's been wonderful talking with you here today. Thank you so much for coming on the show and telling me all about Friskers and about the story. It was really nice. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Dr. Mike Duffy's new book is a message of resilience and redemption. The title is The Tragedies and Triumphs in an Alcoholic's Family, A Journey to Alcoholic Hell and Back. And I'm going to talk all about this book with the author. Mike is here with me. Mike, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for joining me.
Well, thank you for having me.
The pleasure's all mine. I'm interested to learn all about the tragedies and triumphs in an alcoholic's family. Mike, can you tell me about it?
Well, the book is about the miraculous story of my dad's recovery from alcoholism, going from the gutters of Skid Row in Chicago to the beautiful Napa Valley and becoming one of the most prominent voices in recovery for his day. He became a pioneer in non-medical detoxification and started a treatment center that still exists today, over 50 years later.
Wow. And Mike, what gave you the idea to write this story and publish it for the world?
Well, I've had a lifetime of experience growing up in an alcoholic's home and then watching my dad's recovery and then watching the powerful impact of the work that he did and eventually the work that my two brothers and I joined him in doing. And with that knowledge and then understanding the universal negative impact of addiction and so many people hurting because of it, it just seemed like a necessary book to write. It really is a book about hope and help.
Would you say you primarily wrote this for people who are struggling with addiction or in recovery?
Not primarily, but it is for them as well. In fact, in the book, we have at the end of some of the chapters some comments from a longtime recovery friend named Liz. And she puts a recovering person's perspective on the lessons that we have learned. And so it provides a real broad and deep perspective on the impact of addiction for both the addict and those around the addict.
Once you sat down, got started on this book, Mike, how long of a journey was this for you, clear up until it was published and out there?
Well, that's a loaded question in a sense. I have been disciplined in my own life to capture thoughts and experiences in a pretty detailed thought tank that I've maintained for decades. And so a couple of years ago, as I started to see the need to write this, I had a lot of content already developed in that thought tank. So I would say that the writing of the book itself took just about a year.
And then you hand it off to your publisher, and then that publishing process begins, and that's a whole different ballgame there. There's so many things involved. Mike, what do you find challenging about the publishing end of things?
Well, I think just the timeline. I mean, once you start writing, the anticipation, I think, kind of builds in my heart anyway, and you're anxious to get the message out and to go through the process of having your manuscript reviewed and accepted and then edit and then cover layout and page layout and stuff. It just takes a lot of time. So it isn't really a problem. It's just the fact that once you're started, your goal is to get the book out there to as many people as possible. And so it's just a challenge to have that timeline kind of drag out for you.
And after all that time, that waiting, the anticipation, finally the day arrives. Finally, your first copy comes in. You get to hold your finished product. Mike, what kind of a moment is that like for you?
Well, it was a special moment. I would say the emotion that I experienced the greatest would have been gratification. I was grateful that I would be able to put kind of a lid on the story and finally communicate it to a vast audience that I know in my heart many needing a lot of help. And so there was a great deal of satisfaction, gratification there.
I think a lot of people are going to be into this book. A lot of people are going to be helped by it. Again, the title is The Tragedies and Triumphs in an Alcoholic's Family, A Journey to Alcoholic Hell and Back. It's written by Dr. Mike Duffy, published by Christian Faith Publishing, and it's available everywhere. like on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and iTunes, and also down the street at your local bookshop. Mike, thank you again for coming on the show and telling me about this book and all about all the other things you got going on. It was really nice talking with you tonight.
Likewise. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Who Connects Your Dots? The Power of Critical Thinking. That's the name of the new book. It's written by Jill Fandrich, and it explores how to discern the truth from media manipulation. That's what we're going to be talking about right now here at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. Jill is right here with me. Jill, welcome to the show. I appreciate you being here with me tonight.
Thank you, Corey. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. I'm interested in Who Connects Your Dots. Jill, can you tell me all about it?
Yes, this book is about critical thinking, and I found it very important, especially as I was watching media and I saw one station having one point of view and then another station having a completely different point of view. And I just had to wonder, how can both be right? And so this made me start to think and think more and start to critically think and realize it is so important for each of us to start thinking critically and learn to decipher the information for ourselves and find the truthfulness in it. And so I created this book where I talk about how to think critically. So I teach you how to think critically, what it is, and then I get into many topics on where you can apply the critical thinking, including to media and decision-making and even things like blaming and what is cancel culture and censorship. So I get into a lot of different topics in this book.
Now, Jill, when you were writing this, did you have a specific reading audience in mind for it?
Well, what came to me was specifically an adult and a young adult and up audience. I have since written a book called Students, Who Connects Your Dots, and I really focus on student-age people. But this one in particular is probably more for young adults to adults and up, you know, who would be more prone to watch news and media and be involved in that type of thing.
What does your writing background look like, Jill? Have you done much of this prior?
This is actually my third of 8 books.
Oh, wow.
I have written quite a few,
Yeah.
but in my past, I am also a doctor of pharmacy, and so I've done extensive writing within that field. So I have been in the writing field, and I'll give my mom a plug here too. She was an English teacher, and it would have been her dream if I was in writing growing up, but I wanted nothing to do with it, and I have developed into it though. So I give my mom a lot of credit for that.
Once you embarked on this journey of getting started on this book, how long of a process was it for you, including the publishing thing and everything?
Well, this particular book, it just came to me, and I wrote it probably in less than a month. Everything just came, and I wrote it, and I edited it. I edit a lot. So I go through it again and again. And then the longest part was the actual publishing and getting through the page design and all the intricacies of having it published. But maybe after my 1 month of writing, it probably took about 6 more months to get it published. And a lot of it was my fault as well, just making little changes here and there. I wanted it as current as possible, so I made a few extra changes.
And once that day came and you finally get your first copy in, you know, Jill, you've been writing a lot and publishing a lot, but does that feeling get old when you finally get to hold it for the first time?
Never. I always have to have a hard copy. I love the hardcover book, and it never gets old. I love to have it, and I can read it and reread it and learn from my own material in there. So I do appreciate everyone that I have.
So you write the book, you hand the manuscript off, and you start that publishing process. It's a whole new ballgame you play at that point. There's a lot of different things involved. Jill, what do you find challenging for you about the publishing end?
Maybe just it's out of my control. Once I hand it off, you know, if somebody else rolls with it at that point, and that's fine, you know, because they're the experts at it. They know what to do with it. So I have to let go and let somebody else take over from there. But it's a fun part of the process too. And just the involvement with other people and other companies, the whole thing is a wonderful experience to be a part of. I really do appreciate what they do. They are experts in their field.
I think a lot of people are going to be really into this book. Again, it's titled, Who Connects Your Dots? The Power of Critical Thinking. It's written by Jill Fandrich and published by Covenant Books, so of course you can get it anywhere like on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and iTunes and also down the street at your local bookshop. Jill, it's been really great talking with you tonight. Thank you so much for telling me all about this work.
Thank you, Corey. It's been a pleasure to be here.
The new book by Loni Hunley. It's titled What If? And it looks at the possibility of what life could be like if we lived according to God's plan and directions for our lives. And I get to talk all about this book. Loni, the author, is here with me now at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. Loni, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you. It's very good to be here.
Well, it's really good to have you here, and I can't wait to hear all about What If, Loni. Can you tell me about it?
Yes, I would be happy to. It is a book that basically encourages people to pick up the Bible and read it for themselves to see what it actually says. You may have been told it says this or that over the years. And so when I wrote What If, I came up with what if questions. I asked the person reading my book to have a Bible handy. I direct them over to scripture to read through and then come back to my book and we go through some what if questions to just get us thinking a little bit more about what we just read and maybe how we can apply it to our lives, and for the future.
Did you have a specific reading audience in mind when you were writing this?
I think basically I really want people who have questions about the Bible, who are open-minded about, okay, I've heard all these things, but I've never really read it for myself. What does it actually really say? So I am always looking for open-minded. Like, come in if you're curious and just sit with me for a while and let's see what you discover for yourself.
Loni, what prompted this book? What gave you the idea to sit down and get started on it?
Well, I can tell you that it was actually the Lord. He was like, put those two words, what if, just popped into my head and they would not go away for probably up to a year. I kept thinking about the words and I wasn't sure what I was supposed to do with them. And I just started doing some research. I felt like God was saying it's going to be a book. So I started diving into the scriptures he directed me to, looking up scripture, looking up the original language and writing questions. And that was how it all came about.
And once you took that plunge, you started off on everything. How long of a journey was this for you, clear up until it was published?
Well, I think from the first concept of, hearing the words, what if, it was probably about a 4-year process. 2 of those years were definitely spent just doing background research, trying to kind of narrow down what the book itself would look like. And then the last 2 were writing it. So just putting it all together and figuring out the format.
Are you experienced in the whole writing and publishing thing, or are you new to this?
I am brand new. This is the first book I have ever published. I've written some other things, but they were like Bible studies that I did with small groups or for myself. So, What If was my first endeavor into the publishing world.
And that first endeavor can certainly be eye-opening. There's an awful lot involved once you hand your manuscript over and you start work on that end. Loni, what did you find the most challenging part about that, the publishing process?
Well, I think coming in, since I really had no idea what to expect, probably a little bit that fear of the unknown. And then, the publisher that I'm with just was wonderful. There was never any guessing what I had to do next. It was a very seamless experience for me. I really enjoyed it. I was surprised because I just really didn't know what was going to happen, but overall, it was a great experience.
What are the chances that you might do it again? Do you think you have another book in you?
I think that I might. I've already kind of been given another little phrase of come sit with me, and I'm doing a lot of research on some words, kind of would be a word-based, like a major word that would have some digging into in the Bible. So I think I might. I think it's working itself into possibly being another book.
Well, I think this book is going to be a blessing to an awful lot of readers, and I encourage those listening right now to seek this out. Again, the title is What If? It's written by Loni Hunley, and it's published by Christian Faith Publishing, so you can find it everywhere. Head on over to Amazon or Barnes & Noble or iTunes or traditional brick-and-mortar stores. You'll be able to find this. Loni, thank you so much for coming on the show. I had a really nice time talking with you here tonight.
Well, thank you, and I enjoyed it, and I appreciate the time.
The new book, written by George Campora, is a journey of love and resilience. The title is Joe's Promise. And I'm going to find out all about this book. The author, George, is here with me now at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. George, welcome to the show. I really appreciate you being here with me.
Oh, the privilege is mine. I'm really enjoying it.
I'm really enjoying our time together, and I'm really curious about Joe's Promise. So, George, can you tell me what readers can expect here?
It's a testament to the power of love and faith. It's a tribute over life's greatest struggles. And the people that are involved in it is J.C. Baxter and Joe. That's a girl. They run into some real serious problems, difficulties through life, but by being in sync with God's love, they come through. And the book is filled with, besides that, there is humor involved in it, so it isn't a boring reading.
George, when you were writing this, did you have a certain reading audience in mind for it?
Well, I don't think that there's, it's probably more toward women readers, but that's not all. There's some men. But I've given out free copies, and, the ladies seem to like it more than men.
How did the idea for this book come about, George? What inspired you to write this?
Well, it kind of come from real life. Back when I was in high school, I used to be a reporter, and there was a girl in there. She was a real sweet girl. I liked her a lot for a Christian group. And all of a sudden, just one afternoon, she stepped up to me and said that her church is having a skating party next Friday and asked me if I would like to come and join them. So I went, and I had a real good time with her. I mean, there was no romance or anything like that, but we had a good time together. Well, anyway, I guess that's where this story started. It started with Joe inviting JC on the date.
George, when it comes to writing and publishing and all of that, are you new to this, or do you have experience doing it?
Well, I'm new to being around books. I've been published in several magazines. I used to be an over-the-road truck driver, and I wrote several articles that were published to the trucking companies and put them in their newsletter. But this is the first time that I've written anything in a book.
Well, congratulations for getting that first one out there. How long of a journey was this for you, George? Clear from when you started it up until it was published and out there.
I'm going to say it had to start out with about 3 years. My writing, it's not something that I can sit down and do and keep going. I get brain dead after a period of time, and then I have to walk away from it, and I do different other things. I build houses, and and I do landscaping and all kinds of other projects, and so I'll get away from it, and when another scene pops into my mind, then I go back at it.
And after all that work that you put into it, finally you get your first copy in the mail that day, and you get to hold Joe's Promise for the first time. George, what were you feeling? What was going through your head at that point?
Well, I was glad to see it. It's too early to say exactly what it's going to happen. I mean, I'm not real sure what it's going to do. If it falls flat, then I'm just going to walk away from it. Anyway, I've taken on a lot of other projects, and it's like building a house, When I get it built and I step back at it and look at it, I can be proud of it. And so I guess that's the way I feel about this. But if it falls flat, then so be it.
And you write your book and you hand your manuscript off to the publisher. Then that publishing process begins, and there's just an awful lot of things involved in that. George, what did you find challenging about that whole publishing process?
Well, it was a complete learning experience for me. I didn't know what to expect. If it falls flat, then I just have to write it off as like my other attempts. If they don't work, so be it. But from what I'm seeing from my neighbors and people that have been reading it and stepped up to me, most of them I get a lot of nice comments.
I think readers are going to love this book and the story in it, and I encourage everyone listening to go seek this out. Again, the title is Joe's Promise. It's written by George Campora, published by Christian Faith Publishing, and so you can get it at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, and also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. George, thank you so much for coming on the show and telling me about Joe's Promise. I had a really nice time talking tonight.
It's really been a pleasure talking to you, too.
Joining me right now at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable is author Rosemary Ryan-Delp. Her new book, The Angel Plan, A New Godly Eating Lifestyle, It's out in stores now, and we're going to talk all about it. Rosemary, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Corey.
Absolutely. Rosemary, congratulations on getting the Angel Plan out there. Can you tell me what readers can expect here?
Well, it's a revolutionary plan that puts together points. It's intermittent fasting, lots and lots of water, and lots of prayer with supplication. Of course, the book explains more, but that's the general principle of the book. This worked for me. It's something that I researched since 2014 and finally started writing on the book in 2019 and put it together. I felt like the Lord led me to publish the book so that others could get the relief from the dance with diets that I had.
When you were writing this, Rosemary, did you have a specific reading audience in mind?
Well, I think it's directed to Christians who have just reached the end of their rope with eating disorders and want to try something that's a new lifestyle. This is not a diet at all. It's a new eating lifestyle. And like I said, it worked fabulously for me. I lost 80 pounds in a very short period of time and became really healthy in a very short period of time. It doesn't involve a lot of exercise. For those of you who don't care to exercise, we do suggest stretching and, trying to move, but it has nothing to do with the success or failure of the Angel Plan. Intermittent fasting brings many health benefits to a person. Those are outlined in my book. One of them includes it begins to heal your thyroid in as little as 2 days. My personal experience was that I had been on 2 different thyroid medications for 25 years. And 3 months into the Angel Plan, I went to my doctor and I was complaining of lightheadedness. And he said, I think we need to remove one of your thyroid medications. And I did, and I felt better. And then 3 months after that, I had to remove the second thyroid medication. So my thyroid was completely healed by the Angel Plan. And all of my blood work since then has showed normal thyroid levels operating at maximum thyroid efficiency. Oh. I know there are many other health benefits to intermittent fasting, and I believe in the 7-17-hour process, which I gleaned from various readings and also from an author who set forth just the specific benefits of intermittent fasting.
Rosemary, what does your writing background look like? Have you done this sort of thing before, or are you new to this whole thing?
I'm new to the whole thing. I have done a lot of writing in my previous career, which was as a paralegal for 42 years. So I had the opportunity to do lots of writing, but not specifically in this. I feel like many of the times when I was writing this book, and especially the devotions, I felt like God just took over. And I looked back later and said, who wrote this? So I just really feel like this is something I couldn't rest without putting into paper. And I think it will help many, especially Christians who are it is devoted to Christians, but Christians who have just reached the end of their rope with their eating disorders, whether it's overeating or anorexia or body dysmorphic disorder. We look at all of those, but it helps us to realize who we are and how we can surrender our eating to the Holy Spirit, whether it's to eat more if we need to do that or to eat not as much to do that. And plus the incredible benefits of intermittent fasting, which include cutting your cholesterol, start making lifestyle changes that lower your body weight and BMI and reduce body fat, improves digestive issues, boosts physical and cognitive performance. And those are just a few of the continuous ways that intermittent fasting has worked for me and for others that I know.
Well, just like Rosemary said, if you're struggling or at the end of your rope about managing your weight, then this is a book that's for you, definitely. Again, the title is The Angel Plan, A New Godly Eating Lifestyle. It's written by Rosemary Ryan-Delp and is published by Christian Faith Publishing, so you can pick it up anywhere, like go on over to Amazon or Barnes & Noble or iTunes, and you'll be able to pick this up, and even at traditional brick-and-mortar stores, too. Rosemary, it's been wonderful talking with you, learning all about the Angel Plan. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me, Corey.
We hope you enjoyed this edition of the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. We hope to see you back here every Friday night at 8 p.m. or listen anytime via podcast at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, to name just a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where independent new authors come first.